Hi, I'm just recording this video partly or mainly for myself to remind me of what I'm doing if I have to do one of these again. But I thought I'd bring you along for the ride as well. So if you enjoy this rather random video and like it, then please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel, because I expect there'll be lots more like this as well. Okay, so what I'm making is a Redcoat from around 1742. Okay, it's 29th Regiment. No lace on it, thankfully, but I've got to make it all by hand. I will machine sew side seams just because it's quicker to do that for me, but all the finishing will be done by hand. So I'm at the stage where I've cut everything out, but I just want to remind myself, like I say, if I do another one of these in the future, of what I've done and how I've cut it out. This is the back panel. One piece, it's going to be open from here, so I've cut away my seam allowance from that point. Okay, it looks like I've added extra here. I haven't, it's just moved over. So it's lined with broadcloth at the bottom, and another fabric which it's gone completely out of my head what the other fabric's called. I've gone at 2 inches above the waistline to cut the broadcloth. Okay, so it's got a little bit here that sticks out because that's going to be machined on. I've left the seam allowance on the side seam because that's going to be joined, and no seam allowance on the bottom because that's all. This is all going to be, these two sides are going to be raw edge. Okay, so centre, back and hem are going to be raw edged, and they're going to be whip stitched together. Then this top fabric for the lining, left it long. What I'll do is I'll whip stitch this on, I'll get this attached, and then I'll probably fiddle that around so that it lays over the top, something like that, when it's complete. But we'll get across that bridge when we get to it. But basically I've left 2 inches. There is a 2-inch overlap of those two fabrics. Okay, and then what I did do, because I know that the sleeve isn't going to be lined, I've left extra fabric, not very much, but I left a bit of extra fabric in the armhole. Obviously I'm going to have 1/2 inch of that is going to go back anyway, but then I've got to get that round and turned under, so I've left a little bit extra there. And what I've also done is left a little bit extra on the shoulder, and then I've also left more on the neck as well. This is raw edge, but that's obviously seamed, and this is seamed. Okay, so that's my backs. Oh, and what's happened down here is that I've pieced it, so I've got to cut that properly, but I've chopped off the corner by accident, so I'm just going to piece that corner when I come to hand sewing it, and I'm going to piece the lining here as well, which is fine. Okay, so that's the back, and then the front is very similar in the fact that we've got this fabric for the front lining. Should I put it underneath? So, and I've added a bit extra here. Not very much, because it didn't occur to me until after I started cutting this that I would need a bit extra, but we will cross that bridge when we come to it, basically. I should be able to turn it over anyway, and I've got a bit on the back to allow for the shoulder. And what I haven't done here yet is I haven't cut away my neckline on the red cloth, so I'm just going to do that now. So I'm leaving the yellow, and I'm just cutting off my seam allowance here. Okay, and then exactly the same at the bottom. I've got piecing going on in the lining, but it's broadcloth. I've got no seam allowance, sorry, I've got 1/2 inch seam allowance here because it's going to be joined on. There's a 2-inch overlap from the broadcloth to the other fabric for the lining, just as it was on the back. And then at the front, the only other thing we've got to think about on the front is that this piece, when it's worn, will turn back on itself, so it needs to be lined with the yellow as well. So that will go to there. I've left all this on because I can cut it away when I'm making it, but that will get tucked back at some point. That comes up approximately to there, that will sit something like that. And then this facing, again, raw edge, so that'll be whip stitched to the red, and then that will get tucked in there, and that go over the top, and probably we will trim something away here so that it's not bulky. Okay, but like I say, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Okay, so that's the front lining and the front body. The sleeves are unlined, apart from, but they're very long because I've cut the cuff in with the sleeve because it'll fold back on itself. And then the cuff only is lined. I've done it in one piece. Hopefully that'll work. If not, I have to recut it. But because of the shaping of the sleeve, I've made this a bit wider, so it will be a bit of a fiddle. But I'll do that when I come to doing. I'll sew up the front seam and then I'll do it. And then the other thing I've got to do is in the middle of the cuff, when it folds up, there's a V cut out, so I've got to do that. But again, it's doing that when I come to sew it together by hand. Okay, so that's the sleeve. And oh, the only other piece which I haven't cut yet also is a mariner's cuff bit which goes on, so I'll do that later. Okay, so I'm working on the front now, and I've stitched by hand the edges together of the facing. I've done the same round the front edge of the skirt and the hem of the skirt, so they're attached, but I've left it open here because I wasn't sure how this section was going to happen. And then underneath here, I just herringboned the facing down just to hold it in place. And then I took the lining, the body lining, and I've laid it over, and although I could bring that up higher, I've just pressed over about a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and I'm going to leave that on top of there. And then I ummed and ahed, and I couldn't decide because I could have done that, but that looks messy. So I flipped that underneath, so put the skirt underneath the front facing, and then because this won't, so I've pressed this over as well. I left it a bit extra. I'm going to leave that in there. I don't think it matters. It's something to fold against as much as anything. And then I'm going to, and I've turned under around the neck, matched up my shoulder. I've got a bit of extra in the sleeve, which is in the armhole, which I did cut that to have extra in the armhole. So I'm happy with that. There's a little bit more over here than I intended, but I think that's okay because this sits down the front. So all I'm going to do, I'm going to trim that bit of wool away here around the neck, so I've only got lining on the neck edge, and I'm going to shape this piece so that it comes up and meets there. But I'm going to wait until I've actually sewn this down to about here and here at each end, so that I can, because if it moves, it might move further up. So yeah, if it tightens as I'm sewing it. So that's where we're at with the fronts. So I'm going to do that now. Oh, and the other thing I've done already, I'll go on to that, is I've done the pocket on the outside. So I've sewn that on. It's just a false flap, there's no pocket. So the button's on, made the buttonholes, put the buttons through, and then I did that bit first, so I've stitched it on. Okay, then I've sewn around the bottom. So what I'm going to do first, a bit like I've herringboned the facing here, now I've decided that that front skirt is going to sit behind the front facing. I'm going to herringbone this piece to the red, to the outside, just to hold it in place, because you don't want it to drop. Because if it's only sewn to the top lining, it might, because of the weight of it, it might start sagging down. So still going to start a little bit in, and the reason for that is because I'm going to machine my side seams together. Still don't trust my hand sewing to be strong enough for the side seams at the moment. What I should have done with this really is sew this in red. Although I'm sewing yellow fabric, it's just in case I do go through too deep, we don't want a line of yellow stitching to show on the outside. So hopefully, notice when there is a video about herringbone stitch. I've done a video before about it. Just think about the fact that if you're right-handed like me, you start from the left and you work across to the right, and with herringbone have it so that it's horizontal to your body. It's not something that you work along so that it's going away from you. I'll show you what I mean in a second when I do slip stitching. So we just get along, and I'm going to flip that facing out of the way as much as I can. Okay, so I've just put a stitch through across that corner just to hold it in place. Just secure that with a few stitches. Cut my thread. And then I'm just going to, because I had to release this earlier, I'm just going to do a couple of herringbone stitches from up there, going up to keep the facing in place. That off, so that's secure. And then the next step is to slip stitch this down. If you don't want to have loads of pins in your work, you can base this, just tack, what I call tacking, which means just a long wide stitch, running stitch. You could just do it so that it's about an inch in from where you're sewing, just to hold it in place. You don't want to have pins in. I personally don't mind having pins in my work. Some people say it distorts it. You just have to be aware of that and make sure it doesn't, basically. If you pin something and you pin it too tight, it will distort it. But if you don't, if you make sure it's nice and flat, it's okay. It does really depend on the fabric you're using and the length of your pins and etc. So there's always exceptions to the rule. But personally for this, I'm not worried about having pins in my work. So, I was talking about direction of where your fabric lays, because I'm going to sew along here. I'm going to slip stitch, which means that I'm going to travel forwards rather than sideways. So I'm just going to stop there. And then I'm going to start here. Actually, because I'm going to want to work that way, I think actually what I'll do is I will tidy that corner up now. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut this and shape it from that bottom corner. So I'm just going to come up like that. Okay, and then we can carry on this slip stitch, but what I'm going to do, I'm just going to catch them together there. Just going to stitch the two layers of yellow together. Oops. That's why people don't like pins being in, because it catches on their thread. But yeah, it's irritating, but I don't have time to tack everything in place first of all. just feeling across. So I'm going to just stop there. Okay, and then thread. Okay, and then I'm going to carry on and go up here and then around my neck, and then I can in yellow, and then I'm going to flip it over and just finish, because this is open at the moment here and here, because I didn't know how I was finishing that area. So I'm going to just then flip it over and continue with my stab stitch going around the edge of the garment around there, and do the same around the neckline, but stop a couple of inches before I get to the shoulder, so it'll allow me to actually sew it to the red to the red when I come to do the back. Okay, so that's where we're at the moment. Once I've done that, I just get the backs are in a similar place, so they just need the body lining putting onto them. I just need to sew up the centre back by machine on both the red and the yellow layers, and then once I've done that, I can then lay them on top of each other and do this to them, so it'll be sewn across the waist and around the neck, and then that's the point where I'll be able to sew the fronts to the back and address whatever I'm going to do at the side seams.